buffering. Hi, Creating Legacies. Thank you for joining us as we talk about becoming a postpartum doula. So, excellent. All right, we are good to go. So, hi, I am the doula Darcy. I am a postpartum doula. I have been a postpartum doula for 10 years, and I think it is just the absolute best job in the world. So I'm excited to talk to you all today about how you can become a postpartum doula too. I am joined by my dear friend, Krista Malte.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here, and sorry for the technical difficulties. Glad we're up and running.
Yes.
Yes, so I have been a postpartum doula for more than 14 years now. I'm also a postpartum doula trainer with DONA International, and I am the owner of Relief Parenting Respite and Resource Center in Hampton, New Hampshire.
Excellent. Awesome. So we can dive right in. We have a question already.
Great.
So you, as you mentioned, you're a postpartum doula trainer for DONA. So Janie is excited for the doula workshop that starts on August 8th.
Woohoo!
What should she bring with her? And Jamie is awesome. I've met her before. She's a local mom, so she's going to be an amazing postpartum doula. So I'm so excited. She's already signed up for the training with you. So what do you bring with you to a postpartum doula training?
That's a really great question. Really, for my particular workshop, I don't have any prerequisites. If you would like to just bring things that make yourself comfortable. So, you never know with temperature, you want to have an extra sweater, or if you want to have, a pair of slippers. So we're a shoe-free center. So bring a pair of slippers if you'd like to have comfy feet. If you have a pillow for your back, whatever it is that's going to help you feel comfortable, because, anytime you're at a training, 4 days is a long time. So the first day, everybody kind of is sitting upright. And by the fourth day, everybody's, sprawled out on the couches and feeling relaxed. If you have a particular notebook you want to bring, you're welcome to do that too. But really, with each of my trainings, I always try and ensure that the major thing you bring is just your enthusiasm and your willingness to learn. And I supply the rest of the stuff. So the manual, the pens, the extra papers, the handouts, the snacks and drinks, those are all supplied as part of my workshop.
That is awesome. So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So before you signed up for a training, let's just talk about how to become a postpartum doula. The first step is finding a training. You can't just declare yourself a postpartum doula. You need to go attend a training. So,
and technically, anybody could be a postpartum doula, right? So, anybody right off the street could say, hey, I'm a doula, because there's no license. However, it's definitely shown that you will get more clients and higher rates if you do take a training and complete your certification.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're feeling called to work with moms and babies and new parents, postpartum doula training is the way to go.
I'm a big fan, obviously, of DONA International as a DONA International trainer. One of the questions that I get asked is like, well, how do I choose which organization? If I'm feeling called, how do I know? And that's, I think, what my thought is, there are a number of different organizations out there that certify. If you Google the DONA difference, DONA difference, you'll see some really interesting information that I think is really compelling for people to choose DONA. So first of all, it's the oldest organization that has certified doulas. There's a lot of research and evidence base behind it. There's a really clear certification process, code of ethics and standards of practice that I think is really important. As our role and our profession is emerging, we have to know for ourselves where our boundaries are, but also so that way our families, when they're saying, oh, where's a doula near me, right, and they're typing it in, they know we've done the work to earn a credential that really shows a high level of ethics and scope and education. And there's a great website called doulamatch.net that people may be familiar with. And if you're not, I encourage you to go check it out. And the founder of the website has, you can see people from all different kinds of certification programs. And what she found was that there are, a few years ago, there were like 45 different certifying organizations, which is a lot. And just even in the last couple of years, there's now more than 65. And that can be really confusing as somebody who wants to become a doula and somebody who is looking to hire a doula. So she compiled all the stats and stuff from her website, and she found, again, that doulas who were trained and certified through DONA International had the most clients and the highest rates. So those are two, I think, good perks when trying to look at how to become a doula.
I know I think it is so overwhelming how many choices there are for trainings. And I think that sticking with some of the major organizations that have been around for a long time is really the way to go, because well, for a lot of reasons that you just mentioned, but I trained through DONA as well. And the main reason I did was I had a really good friend who was a local midwife. And I told her, I said, I just heard about a postpartum doula. I want to become one. And I was like, do you have any tips on how I should get trained? And she's like, without even hesitating, she was like 100%. She's like, check out DONA. She's like, they have the best reputation in the medical community. So that's why I chose DONA. And I, as much as some people might cringe when you bring up medical community and doula work, whatever, let's put that aside. You want midwives and OBs who will recommend you as a doula. So if you're trained with an organization that they respect and admire and trust, they're going to be more apt to recommend you. So like I said, I think DONA is the way to go. But Kappa is also great. I don't want to, be only
there are so many different organizations that are out there. And so I think what's important for people to do is really, ask those questions of people in their community and really think about what are your philosophies as somebody who wants to support families, and do the philosophies and approach that you have align with different organizations. And ask questions, right? So reach out to the trainers in each organization, hear what their responses are, reach out to people who have gone through the certification processes and see what their feedback is. But people have a lot of different opinions, just like parenting, right? So it's got to work for you.
Yes. Yeah. And so I also suggest reach out to the doulas in your area, in your town, and see who they certified with and what their feedback is. There's also so many doula Facebook groups for doulas. And I see over and over again, people interested in becoming a doula posting in there, asking for people's opinions on the different organizations. So that's a good place to kind of get some feedback, but just combing through their websites. And I think talking to the trainers is probably the best way to go. So I just posted the link in the Facebook event for Krista's upcoming DONA Postpartum Doula trainings. And obviously you can ask her questions. And this is why we're doing this right now. This is a chance to post in the comments any questions that you have for Krista. So actually one has come in from Chelsea. So she's asking if we're also trained through PSI. She's coming from a perinatal mental health background and seeing how intertwined these things are. So how do you incorporate mental health needs into the immediate postpartum?
Such a really important question, definitely. So PSI, for anyone watching who's not familiar, is Postpartum Support International. They're a fantastic resource. And so the doulas do not need to also have a clinical background. But for somebody who has a mental health background, and if it's something that is a particular passion that you want to focus on with perinatal specialties, then PSI is a great way to go through that. As somebody who is a trainer, that's a big component of what we talk about in the workshops. Is mental health is critical for all elements, right, in human life, but particularly during times of great transition. And so during the workshop, we spend a huge amount of time talking about how do we support not just the birthing person, but also every family member, checking in with them, because we know that it's not just the birthing person who can have perinatal mental health complications. We know that, rates for depression can affect the partner, and can affect, anxiety in young children, and so on and so forth. So in the workshop, not only do we talk about the importance of, recognizing that it affects everyone in the household, but then we go further to talk about what are some particular symptoms and signs that we want to be screening for. And then what do we do with our families if we're noticing these signs and symptoms? What are those next steps that we need to take? And so that's where it's really important for us to know, again, in our local communities or in our larger, broader communities, who we reach out for. So we do handle mental health throughout the training, and then very, very much so when we're working in home with every family.
Absolutely. And to answer your question, I've done some additional trainings with PSI for like continuing education credits. And I loved all of them that I've done. But you don't have to do them to become a postpartum doula. And kind of postpartum doulas are on the front lines really for postpartum mental health issues. But our role as a doula is to refer out. If someone needs a counselor, we know we have the resources to refer them on. We're not there to necessarily be the counselor. We're certainly there to listen and provide support, but the doula's role, and this is what's covered in a training, is the line of what the doula's role is and where, when you refer out. But I know a local perinatal mental health counselor who's just amazing. But every time I see her, she's like, oh, I wish I had learned about being a postpartum doula. She's like, that's where my passion lies. She's like, I'd love to be like in their house, in the nitty gritty, like helping them with the day-to-day stuff, not necessarily being, in the counselor role. So I think it's great that you already are, that you have that mental health background, but maybe are realizing that you, Chelsea, want to actually be a postpartum doula and serve in this way. So it's awesome. And, you can never have too much training. So, all right, Leah Schilling says she's excited about becoming a postpartum doula, but she's wondering if you could—
1 second, Darcy.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to just follow up. I also wanted to say, you pointed out something that I really think is also helpful for people to understand when they're considering different organizations for training, is that continuing education piece. So if we're starting to get into our doula work and we realize we have perhaps knowledge or really like an invested interest in a particular aspect, be it mental health or breastfeeding or baby wearing or whatever, that's one of the nice things too, is that DONA International requires continuing education. And I say so frequently that, babies and families themselves, they haven't really changed that much over the millennia. But what we know about babies and families changes, the information changes. And that's why I find that it's really an important component of certification, is to keep up with continuing education. And just like you said, so there are really some great organizations out there that are easily accessible to reach that continuing education piece of things.
Yeah.
Now I want to hear about Lee.
Okay. So Leah's super excited about becoming a postpartum doula. She's wondering if we could speak to the reality of the day-to-day of the work. How common is it that clients only want overnight care? Such a great question. And can you create a successful business doing only daytime services? And these are great questions, Leah. And how do you set your services apart in the mind of the client from being a nanny, cleaner, babysitter? So the correct expectations are there. So, all right, let's tackle the first thing of how common is it to have clients who only want overnight care? Go ahead. I was going to say, I think it really depends on where you live. Where Krista and I are both located on the seacoast of New Hampshire, overnight care is not super popular. It's certainly out there and certainly wanted, but I know Krista and I both built our postpartum doula businesses only doing daytime care. I had little kids when I first started, so I just couldn't. And even now, I always say, like, I had 3 babies in 4 years. I've done enough. Oh, I've missed enough sleep. Like, I don't do that anymore. So you certainly can build a successful business only serving during the day. It certainly is helpful if you can do overnight care, because there are clients who want it, and it is, you're there for 9 or 10 hours. So it's a good way to earn money, but it's definitely not necessary. What would you add to that, Krista?
100%. I say, again, to families that I'm working with and to doulas who are in my trainings, if you are well supported during the day, it makes nighttime parenting that much easier. And so a big discussion that we have in the training as well is, what does it look like to provide overnight care, and does that differ from daytime support? And obviously we go into it with much greater depth in the workshop, but the bottom line is it should look the same. And so that's something that I think when people are considering doula work, they're thinking, okay, well, do I just show up with my bunny slippers and my bathrobe and I just go take a nap, down the hall while everybody's sleeping? And, other people handle this in a number of different ways, kind of a hot topic conversation for a lot of doulas. But from a trainer role, I like to emphasize that, first of all, you don't ever have to do anything you don't want to. That's one of the beauties of being a postpartum doula, is you can set the schedule to meet what your availability and your desirability for work is. And secondly, if you are going to be there overnight, you still want to be doing those same components of educating, you're nurturing, you're assessing their situation, you're referring out to different resources. That should all still be the same.
Yeah. All right, so the second part of her question is, how do you set your services apart in the mind of the client from being a nanny, a cleaner, or a babysitter, so that the correct expectations are there? It's awesome, Leah, that you're already thinking about this, because this is a huge thing. So Krista, what would you say to that?
This is right from the start, day one type of stuff, is really having a clear sense for ourselves of what is our role. And this is where, going back to those standards of practice, those code of ethics really can help define that, about what are our boundaries and where do we make sure we're not overstepping. And when we can clearly understand our role, it's then much easier to go and educate other people, be it a family who might be interested in help or a professional you're trying to partner with and get referrals from. And so developing that elevator speech, I think, is one of the most critical aspects, not only for ourselves to understand our role, but to be able to then educate and help other people to understand what our role is and how we're defined apart from those other aspects of care.
Yeah. And I think this is something that you kind of cover in like a prenatal interview. People, you kind of go, I always explain, what I will do. And then in my contract, that's basically what my contract is. It's just a very simple document that's like, here's what I will do, here's what I don't do, and it flat out says, like, I will not mop floors or do landscaping, like things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's really clear to set those boundaries. And also, it kind of comes up when you're even talking about what your rate is, like, I charge this because I'm here to help educate and really answer your questions and help you set up your parenting style. If you are really looking for a housekeeper, you can get that for much cheaper. Yes, I will fold your laundry and empty the dishwasher and tidy up the kitchen as I'm doing everything else. But,
you're a professional.
I'm a professional, and I'm not a professional housekeeper. So I always, just as a funny side note, I always say that because still 10 years into this and, 40 plus years on the earth, I still cannot fold a fitted sheet to save my life. And you'd think I would have mastered it by now. But I always say to people, like, listen, I'm a postpartum doula. I'm not a professional sheet folder. So here it is, kind of in a ball.
I'll give you some tips, Darcy.
But yeah, so I think just being clear in the interview and like Krista said, like on the first visit, kind of, setting boundaries is, yeah. So Annie says, yes, even as a nanny, when I interview, I always mention that if they need a housekeeper, I'm not one. So yes, great point. All right, so Danielle says she's interested in becoming a postpartum doula, but not sure that she'll be living in this location long-term. Would she be able to start training now, or should she wait until she establishes a permanent residence? Ooh, good question. I hear this a lot.
I would say, again, the certification process can take some time. So especially right now, where there's so many different options available, you can do some in-person workshops. There's virtual workshops available as well. I can only speak to the requirements of the organization that I know. So for DONA International, the founding aspect of the certification is that workshop. And so for me, I do a 4-day workshop so that we can talk about a number of different things in kind of a brief period of time. I also just developed a longer term kind of once a week thing for 16 weeks if you're looking for something kind of more ongoing. But either way, I don't think it's necessarily dependent upon your location. That's one of the wonderful things about, again, our work is that people have babies all over the world. They're always going to need help. And being an international organization, you can get work anywhere in the world.
Yeah. And, I always say I was kind of surprised at how long the training process took. Not the training was 4 days, but there's a reading list that you have to do and some other smaller workshops that you have to take. So I say start now and, and then
and from the time of your workshop, you have 4 years to complete it. It's really when you purchase a certification packet that the timeline then becomes 2 years. So there is quite a bit of leeway in terms of like completion as well.
Yeah. So I think, and then waiting till you move to your permanent residence before you make your website and business cards and stuff like that. But certainly start the training process now. All right. Sarah Denny says she lives in a rural area in a town with limited resources. I think most people here have no idea what a doula is. And at the same time, I know this service is needed here. How do I go about trying to be a postpartum doula in a town where that is unheard of? Love this question. Krista and I are in New Hampshire. And so 10 years ago when I started, and even when I told people, like, I'm going to become a postpartum doula, my friends, everybody was like, what?
What?
Yeah. So people, and I think here people had kind of heard about a birth doula, but nobody knew what a postpartum doula was. So, Sarah, I would say if you have the passion for it, go for it. And just know you are going to have, you kind of have to educate as you go and start talking to everybody in the grocery store, everywhere you go, about what you're doing. And you will really come up with a great elevator pitch of the role of a postpartum doula and how you help new families and why new families need this support. And you can eventually grow a successful business. What would you add to that, Krista?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first started, I was one of 2 doulas, and the nearest doula to me was about a half an hour or so away. So, it can be really daunting to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm the only one, and how do I navigate that? But at the same time, it can also be a really fantastic opportunity. So I say, just like Darcy said, to echo that, like if you are excited, if you're passionate, if you can see the need, then it's just about supporting yourself and getting the elements that you are going to need to make yourself successful. Because parents are always needing help.
Exactly. And, honestly, Krista, this is kind of how one of the really biggest benefits of you and I connecting is, I reached out to Krista because at the time she was the only other postpartum doula in the area. And we ended up deciding to collaborate and not compete. And so we started working together, and with some other birth doulas in the area, we started having local events and, doula teas and mocktail parties. And by teaming up with other doulas in the area, even if they're birth doulas, and doing things, you're raising awareness of doula work in general. And I think that is a huge piece of getting the word out in your town. So I would say now, I mean, it's been 10 years, but Krista, I really think you and I can take a lot of credit for the fact that in our local area, people know what a postpartum doula is. I mean, certainly not everybody does, but the awareness of postpartum doulas has certainly been raised. And I think we just did that on our own. So Sarah, don't be afraid to be the one that makes doulas famous in your town.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, Lisa. Oh my God, you guys are asking such good questions. Lisa Roberts is wondering if it's challenging to stay just as a postpartum doula, or if clients are often looking for someone to do both birth and postpartum.
I always love to jump in and say, I leave birth to my birth friends, and my heart has always been solely in postpartum. I used to say, I just do postpartum. And I'm like, no, I'm going to change the wording there, because it's not just. I do solely postpartum doula work. And I know Darcy does as well. And so there are always going to be people who are interested in pursuing both the birth certification and the postpartum certification. There are always going to be families who are ideally looking to have that continuity of care, but it is not at all a deal breaker for most people. I've never found it to be a problem finding clients and obtaining clients for me. And Darcy, what do you?
I agree 100%. I've only ever been a postpartum doula because, again, that's where my interest is. I think I always say birth is cool, but the postpartum period is where my passion is. So I only ever wanted to be a postpartum doula. And I have to say that now, looking back, I thought the same thing, Lisa, when I started, that I would have to do both. But it's hard to do both, because if you're a birth doula, you have to be on call. So, and if you're a postpartum doula, clients want a schedule with you. So you can't really provide a consistent schedule as a postpartum doula if you're on call. There's always the caveat of like, oh, I know you're planning on me coming 10 to 2, but I might go to a birth. So clients don't want that. They want to know that you're coming and they're going to get a nap.
Yeah. This is so the logistics and the structure of how you set something up is really important. Or again, knowing who your local community resources are for backup, like Darcy and I started out, and we've always really been able to support each other, is really important.
Yeah. And then I've found, and this is near us, so obviously this isn't everywhere, but the birth doulas kind of feel the same way. Their passion is birth. They don't really want to do postpartum work. They do their follow-up visits, but that's where I get most of my clients, is my birth doula friends who are like, oh, if their client wants some postpartum support, they don't want to do it. And so they refer to me. So certainly do not let that hold you back. In terms of, it's absolutely possible to be just a postpartum doula. Here's another benefit to that is, whereas where not everybody knows what a doula is. So I always say, like, when you're at 7 centimeters, you can't start Googling birth doulas and hire one. But when you're 2 weeks postpartum and realizing that you need some help, you can hire a postpartum doula. So that's another benefit of being a postpartum doula, is that I think it's a little easier to get clients. So, all right, let's do one more question. Do you want to just talk, Krista, about the role of a postpartum doula? Like, what exactly? Oh, hold on. Never mind. A question just came in from Anna, and it's a good one. So Anna says she's currently being certified to be a lactation counselor and would love to do a postpartum doula certification next. She's wondering if they can go hand in hand and if they both can benefit my business. Do clients look for multiple services? So Anna, you're in
Yeah.
luck because both Krista and I are also postpartum doulas and lactation counselors. So I would say they absolutely go hand in hand. And what I always do, and I think Krista does the same thing, I always just say, you know, my lactation services are just baked into my postpartum doula services. So if you hire me to be your postpartum doula and you're breastfeeding, I am going to give you breastfeeding advice and support, and it's the same rate whether you're formula feeding or breastfeeding. So and I mean, my lactation counselor training has served me so well. I mean, I use it every single day with my breastfeeding clients. The cool thing is that you can also offer on the side lactation visits for people who aren't your postpartum doula clients. So I would say it's certainly, they absolutely go hand in hand. You don't have to be a lactation counselor to be a postpartum doula, but it's certainly a big benefit if you already are one. What would you add, Krista?
Yeah, absolutely. That exactly that. You can certainly incorporate it, and you will every day into your work with families who are breastfeeding. But you can also set it aside as its own standalone service. For those people who don't have that additional certification already, it, like you said, it is not necessary. And we spend a huge amount of time in the training talking about breastfeeding basics. And then as part of the additional requirement for certification, there's also a 3-hour workshop that I usually tack on to the cost and the time of my training for postpartum doulas. So by the end of the 4 days, you've had the postpartum doula certification component and that 3-hour breastfeeding component already taken care of to really jumpstart the certification process. And again, I think it goes back to our conversation earlier about the continuing education. So if you have a knowledge gap or a particular passion, pursuing an additional certification like the lactation support can be an awesome additional service to provide.
Yeah, awesome. So Krista, I know you have to go, and you can feel free to just leave, and I will hang around. But where can people find you, Krista, if they want to check out your training? I posted the link, but
Perfect. Yeah, if you can post the link, it's reliefparenting.com/doula training. And I have a number of different workshops coming up for the remainder of the year. On my next one starts in a few weeks, and then we have an in-person one coming up in August. I just developed a longer program, as I said, for somebody who's looking to kind of start to finish everything in a short amount of time. And please don't hesitate to reach out. So you can like me on Facebook and on Instagram. You can find me at Relief Parenting or at Krista Malte. And yeah, I'm so happy to answer any questions and help support people through this process, because as Darcy and I always say, the world needs more postpartum doulas. So
it certainly does. And your training that's coming up in a couple of weeks is virtual, right? So people anywhere can join.
Absolutely.
Yes. So awesome. Thank you, Krista. So I am here if anybody still has some questions, and you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the Doula Darcy, and please reach out, shoot me a message with your questions. Like Krista said, being a postpartum doula is the best job in the world, and I love it, and I've been supporting myself. It's been my job for the past 10 years, so it certainly is doable. One thing I always like to express that maybe isn't entirely clear during the trainings is that, a postpartum doula is not something like you do the training and get certified and then, so Leah just said, what's the most challenging part of this work? I think the most challenging part of this work is that you can't just go get a job at a hospital or something as a postpartum doula. You have to create your own business and you have to market yourself. So I was lucky enough that before I had kids and before I became a doula, I had worked in advertising and marketing for 10 years. So I leaned on those skills to help me build my postpartum doula business. And that was the key to my success. And now I'm still a postpartum doula, but I'm helping other postpartum doulas build their businesses by focusing on the business and the marketing side of things. So, and I hear that so often. There's so many people that go through the work of becoming trained and certified as postpartum doulas, but then they can't get clients, so they have to go back to their other jobs. So I want to help you work as a doula. So, and just be really upfront and clear that you're going to have to do this. Like, you have to get a website, you have to network, you have to get the word out there. That you're here and you're a postpartum doula and you're helping moms and babies and parents. And so
I would echo that. I would say that's one of the things that I think people ask me most frequently is like, okay, well, what's really hard about it? And there's always going to be challenges, like every profession, right? So I mean, there's going to be sometimes making, again, those boundaries can be a really big challenge for some people, right? Like when you can't save and fix situations. We talk a lot about that in the training too, is like, how do you do your role, do it well, but know that you can't save somebody? Or other challenges sometimes are just the logistics, right? Of like, how do I transition from a full-time job to this work as a doula? But I think, like Darcy said, finding the clients, getting your name out there, showing that you are a professional is also probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah. But
I do have to scoot out. So I wanted to say goodbye and thank you. And please don't hesitate to reach out. And Darcy and I are back every week. And so I'll look forward to having some more conversations.
Yes. So yeah, we'll be talking next week about more on this same topic. So tune in Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We will try to get our technological act together so we're not late again. But if you are interested in becoming a postpartum doula, Krista is amazing. She's an amazing trainer, and I didn't personally train with her, but she, like I said, once I did train, I reached out to her. I have learned so much from her. She is so professional, so organized, and so knowledgeable. So if you're still looking for a postpartum doula training, I highly recommend training with her. She is amazing. Leah, our pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm glad you found this helpful. Stay in touch. I have a couple of programs once you are trained to help you with the marketing side of business. One is an online self-paced class called Kickstart Your Postpartum Doula Business, which helps you with nailing the prenatal interview, what to do on your first few visits. It's so common to complete your certification, but then you have a client, you're like, wait, what do I actually do when I'm in their house? So I give you a checklist of 10 touch points to go through on your first visit, and then 5 tips to get your next 5 clients. So I will put that link here. And then I also run a program called the Postpartum Doula Academy, which is a 3-month kind of more intense program that focuses on the marketing and business side of being a doula. So if you follow me on Instagram at the Doula Darcy and on Facebook, mostly on Instagram though, I'm always giving away, talking about and giving tips on marketing your postpartum doula business. So like I said, I am so passionate about getting more postpartum doulas out there working, serving these families who need us. So that is my goal. So please stay in touch. Krista and I are both here to help you, and we can't wait to have you out there working with us. So have a great day.